Stuntman's Fall, Pricier Meal Deals, and Phantom AI. Welcome to Mark and Pete. From flaming stuntman to flaming expensive sandwiches and even a phantom in the Oval Office, Mark and Pete are here to set the world straight with wit, wisdom, and a dose of scripture. Now here is our first thought.
The Fall Guy. To be a Hollywood stuntman, ensure you maximize what you earn, for your career may have many pitfalls and could also crash and burn. Yes, indeed, I'm afraid being a stuntman is not an easy job. And unfortunately, Ronnie Rondell Jr., who was famously set alight on the front cover of the Pink Floyd's iconic album, Wish You Were Here, has died at the age of 88.
Yeah.
Now, the Hollywood stuntman and actor died, and he left a long-standing family who also followed in his career footsteps. His son, who's also called Ronald, has certainly been in part of the entertainment industry. Now, most notably, Ronnie is a famous stuntman, and he's been in many films that you will know. He's been in the 1960s film TV series right the way through to the 70s and 80s. And the things that stand out for me, and I didn't realize this myself, he'd been in Charlie's Angels, Dynasty, Baywatch. He was even in Spartacus, Diamonds Are Forever, and The Karate Kid. Now, Mr. Pete, I ask you, this is a man who's been in some of the most famous movies, and yet, did you know who he was?
No, I didn't until the fact finding before this show. I didn't know who he was, and yet I knew some of the shows and films that he'd been in. So there you go. I knew his work. It is quite strange, isn't it, to think that? I mean, yes. I've actually seen him in action, but I didn't know who he was. In fact, I suppose you know, if a stuntman is doing his job well, you think he's actually still the actor who does the drama bits, does the acting, actually in the stunt, if he's doing his job well. Although, you know, sometimes it's pretty obvious it's not that. But in this case, I wasn't aware of it. So that's obviously was doing a good job.
Well, he was doing an excellent job. Now, what you got to remember, in the 1975 album that was done by Pink Floyd, this is well before artificial intelligence or any kind of advanced technology. When they actually took a photograph, they actually had to take a photograph of the real image. And in the particular case that we're talking about, and I'm sure many people have got this album at home, it's two perceived businessmen shaking hands, and the one on the right is Ronnie, who's set alight. He was actually genuinely put into flames. What's interesting is the stunt was so risky that, you know, many people actually didn't want him to do it, but he decided to do it. It was a big stunt. Now, actually, they had the crew all standing by the side. He did actually suffer some serious burns, but he recovered. But it is iconic. You know, when we think about that image, there's no doubt that many pop music fans, and particularly fans of Pink Floyd, will know what I'm talking about here. But it's incredible how far he would go. Now, one of his best known stunts for a film that was called The Kings of the Sun was actually leaping from, again, a pole that was on fire. There seems to be a theme here where he specialized. But what was so staggering about it is the audacity of being able to do it. He clearly knew his game very, very well. Now, it's also some of the other things that you'll be interested in. He wasn't just in some of those films that you typically would see where the action scenes, like a war film or something like that. But he was also in the bar brawl on the 1974 Western comedy Blazing Saddles.
Oh, was he?
And again, an impressive fire scenes in the Towering Inferno.
Of course.
Yes, you can see there's a theme coming here. But let's say that he had a flaming good career.
Yes, well, I heard he was actually in that 1992 classic, The Mighty Ducks. So
yes,
he really
exactly.
has been in some of the great movies of all time.
Yes.
He didn't win an Oscar, but that means he's,
No.
in my view, he's a credible performer. But yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? That that's the case. That
Well, he
we don't know
retired in
him.
2001. I guess
Oh,
his
did he?
career burnt out by that point.
Thank you. Yes. Now we like to sometimes do a bit of a theological reflection here and look at what's going on in the world and say, well, what does this show us about what God's like and what Christian belief has to say about it? Now, but this is an obvious one, I think, because here you have someone who's the real hero of the story, but you don't know who he is. He's the one who actually gets battered and risks his life on behalf of the actor. And of course,
yes,
in Christian belief, Jesus, God himself, is unrecognized when he arrived on the scene by his own people, and he's the one who suffers on our behalf to give us freedom if we trust in him. So there we are. And in fact, it says, Hebrews 11:38 says of him, of Jesus, the world was not worthy of him. Maybe the world wasn't worthy of Ronnie Rondell Jr. He went to such lengths that he even set himself ablaze for art.
Yes, and for the sake of many, many stars who benefited from his exploits. I will say that sort of when we sort of close on this particular subject, that as a stuntman's job must be one of the most exhilarating, but at the same time slightly frustrating, because you know that you're there on the silver screen making a film come to life, and yet you can walk down the street and nobody knows who you are.
Mm-hmm.
And now I suppose there's good and bad behind that, but either way, clearly Ronnie Rondell Jr. knew his business. He was a consummate professional. He took many, many risks on behalf of many production companies, and it's sad to see him go. But there we are. That's our tribute to Ronnie. Well done, sir. We hope that you don't have too many stunts and falls in heaven.
Amen.
Well, there you go. Now let's move on to a different story. And unfortunately, this time may be that perhaps some people are feeling a little bit of the pinch. Maybe it's about biting off more than you can chew. A meal deal has great appeal when you want to merrily munch, but your lips will seal with a big ordeal as your wallet feels the crunch. Yes, unfortunately, as we know, the economy is biting, but prices are rising. Now, for many people, a lunchtime meal deal is something quite essential, and many people rely on it, not just students, but people who have very low incomes. Now, what's interesting is that Tesco, is a well-known retailer in the United Kingdom and other parts of Europe, have actually started to increase their prices quite dramatically. Now, of course, this is what they would say is because, of course, the raw ingredients are increasing and supply chain costs are increasing. But here's an example. From £3.60 to £3.85 is where club holders are starting to see things go up. Mr. Pete, I know that we all love a good sandwich, snack and a good deal, but I'm afraid we're reaching the point where some people just are feeling the squeeze just too much.
Yes, prices have risen. Now we could go on at length about the causes of this, going back to huge mistakes made by the national government in Britain and governments around the world, particularly going back to 2020 and onwards. But the point is, we're in this position now. What do you do about it? Well,
correct.
It's interesting, isn't it? These are real world consequences. When you warn the country's in financial trouble, it can seem like you're just saying something academic, but it's real. If you can't afford your lunch, that's something very real. And the Tesco meal deal, which I know well, you get your 3 piece, you get your main, your snack, and your drink, and it's very, very convenient, and it's a lower price if you got a Tesco Club card. Others are available. We're not advertising that, but it's relevant to the story. If it's rising by 25p, that's a significant rise. Yeah, and you're right. People won't be able to afford it. So what do they do? Well, I suppose there are people who have stepped in, we used to have a shop known as a social supermarket and a church that I ran not that long ago, and people were coming then, which is we're talking a year and a half ago since I left there. people then were finding that they couldn't afford the supermarket prices and needed something a bit cheaper. We were selling them short-dated stuff from the same supermarkets.
Yes.
But there is another side to it, of course. If you learn how to cook and prepare, you can actually make things for cheaper than a meal deal. So it's a question of getting back to basics, I think, and making your own food. But that isn't the total solution, of course, because you alluded to the fact that, yes, supply chains are in trouble. And now, if you just switch to going to local shops, it would be more expensive, not less.
Yeah.
Which is ludicrous, of course, because local produce should be cheaper, really. But it isn't because of the scale of supermarkets like Tesco being able to undercut the prices of local shops.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that, of course, we all know that prices are increasing because, again, goods from abroad get expensive. Now, the British Retail Consortium recently said in the media, as retailers, we have done everything we can to shield our customers from the worst inflationary pressures. But as they persist, it is becoming more and more challenging for us to absorb the cost pressures we face. Well, that's fine. However, the point being is it's getting to the situation where they're just going to lose their customer base. To your point there, that maybe people will turn away and they'll either have to compromise. But there's another factor to this as well, which I thought was interesting. Now, a lot of the retailers have noted that many employers have seen, obviously, the national insurance go up and higher employment costs. But the other factor is the new packaging tax. And that's added effectively £7 billion in new cost to retail businesses. Now, the reason point being here, and we've talked about this in the past about packaging and, the use of waste materials, waste being, cardboard, plastics and other things. And so obviously there is a tax on retailers and manufacturers in terms of the type of products that they produce. If they are more in recycling goods, they're less likely to obviously have tax on them. But that's where another part of the things, the hidden cost, should we say, because when you pick up a meal deal, you're not just picking up, of course, the actual sandwich and anything else raw on itself. It's contained within a piece of packaging.
Yes.
So I think maybe, and here's where I was wondering, whether there is something where maybe the retailers combined with the manufacturers, they can work together to cut that cost back down, meaning look at alternatives. I mean, there was a time, and I'm sure, Mr. Pete, you can remember, where you could walk into a shop and it was a sandwich, carefully behind a glass sheet. And what you could do is basically you put it in a paper bag. And of course, that's easy.
Yes.
It's recycled. But I do understand in mass volume, it's difficult to have your egg and cress sandwiches spilling everywhere. You need to contain them. But there must be a way of being able to reduce the amount of plastic. So that would save a bit of cost in itself. Now, the other thing is that the British Retail Consortium, the RTC, has said, yes, they're trying to absorb the margins, but ironically, we're at a point now where the pressure is at a point where people are compromising on what they eat. And that's the thing that I think can't be good, because you want a healthy workforce out there, out and about, whether they're working at home, working in an office. They can't compromise and cut out their meals, can they?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you don't want them compromising, having I don't know, a chocolate bar, a cheap biscuit instead of a full lunch.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, an anti-capitalist might say, well, those Tesco shareholders aren't forgoing their steak suppers while people can't afford the Tesco Meal Deal. I mean, it's not as simple as that, of course, but that sort of highlights the issue here, that it's the people who are on a tight budget, living paycheck to paycheck, as it's sometimes called, who are going to be hit by this. And the way to do it, yes, so I think manufacturers will need to respond, because if people aren't buying them at all, then they're in trouble.
Correct.
So don't buy it. Make them change their deal. until it
Well,
suits your pocket.
maybe the retail consortium and manufacturers and Tesco should start having them eating a bit of humble pie. That might
Yes.
help.
Delicious.
Anyway, let's move on to a completely different story. This is one which is not a picture of health. When people appear to be a picture of health, the overall impression could be a mistake. But if AI distorts the image by stealth, the view might just be fake. Yes, now for many people who've been observant on social media, you may have noticed that there has been imagery of European leaders perceived to be waiting outside of Donald Trump's Oval Office. Yes, sitting there like naughty little children, all side by side. Yes, Emmanuel Macron there, looking down, forlorn, lost, and
Yes, as well he should be.
but
Yes.
and well he should be. But look a little bit closer, folks, because when you actually realize that the image is actually generated by AI, we now start to question the world that we're living in. Mr. Pete, we'll go into this in a little bit more detail, but can we now trust any imagery that goes out on social media because of what AI can do?
Well, it's got to that stage. I mean, it was already difficult. Someone skilled in Photoshop, for example, could already manipulate images, but now it's simpler to do so. Although there are still telltale signs, aren't there?
Yes, we'll go into this.
Yes, we'll come to that in a minute. But yeah, I think that it's got to the stage where we don't even trust video, let alone images, to be accurate.
Yes. Now, what's interesting, if you look at the image very closely, you'll notice that there's a phantom foot. In fact, there are several phantom feet that seem to appear by Macron. In fact, there's an extra leg. And then when you realize also that the floor that they're standing on, the pattern doesn't quite match up. And then what you also realize that the people in the distance and the photo aren't actual leaders at all. Macron is clearly Macron. Somehow the AI has generated him. But isn't it incredible? Because when you look at the image straight away, you think, there he is, sitting outside the Oval Office like a naughty little schoolboy, when in actual fact it's not the case at all. But it sends out the wrong signal, doesn't it? A picture tells 1,000 words. And I wonder where is this going to end? Because it could spark a reaction, which it often does. But what happens if it's not just about a reaction on social media? If somebody takes action in person and thinks, I saw that image, I saw that video, I saw somebody say something, do something.
Yes, it's so easy.
How do you control this?
You can also, of course, separate to the image, I said video, you can always also sample and then get an AI to generate new sentences with it. So it actually is the person's voice. Now, sometimes quite often the intonation gives it away, but you know, as a skilled person giving the right prompts to AI, could achieve something that's incriminating, that someone said, for example.
Right.
So it is very worrying. I mean, there are telltale signs, and I think as these things develop, just as in the movies we were amazed in the 70s that Superman looked like he could fly, but now we can see the wires. You know, it's just as we become more attuned.
What? You mean he's not real?
No, of course I don't. No, of course not. No. Sorry, my mistake. But you know, as we get more attuned to a particular technology, humans can see through it, and I think the same is going to be true of AI. But not yet. It's all new to us at the moment, so it is very worrying.
It is worrying. And what's interesting on the other side of it, you mentioned about Hollywood, because there are a lot of films where the challenge has always been about having, subtitles. Well, actually now AI can be so sophisticated that it can manipulate the movements of lips and align to an actor, or even ironically AI, translating from one language to another and making it appear real. That's already been done. And so when you think about that, if you apply it in a political environment, you know, having something like a voice piece from Donald Trump when it's not really Donald Trump or Emmanuel Macron or Keir Starmer or whoever it is, you know, the fact of the matter is that is worrying. I think that, you can see the good and the bad in this. There's no doubt that artificial intelligence can be entertaining. It can certainly maybe cut down costs because maybe you now don't actually need to physically
Yes.
produce the stunt in the physical sense. You can actually simulate it. But I do think that there are some concerns of how does government now, as well as organizations, as well as individuals, protect themselves, their integrity, as well as make sure that there isn't that fake news that's coming through the social channels.
Yes.
Is that the responsibility of the social media companies, or who ultimately needs to vet this?
Oh, you're talking about vetting. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
vetting of things like put someone's testimony, is something true or not, you're doubting whether image is real. Well, I think that there are already things in place to do the various parts of that. I mean, if it's something that's been used as testimony in a legal sense, well, you already have a responsibility to provide to provide your evidence in advance to the opposite party in a court case, and therefore to analyze it. And so that is provided for. I think there need to be specific provisions, for showing the AI code or something like that. But that may well come from, and I think it's best left for this, from actual court cases. So we then have a case history of what has happened, and the law develops in that way. The responsibility, though, of just in the general sense, do we want to know what's real? I think that will come from the market. I think the pressure will be from people, and it's to a certain extent already is, to know which is true. So there will be AI developed, AI analysis tools developed, so you can tell what images are real. There's already such tools available for written AI work to see. You can tell whether it's AI. You can run it through a tool that will tell you that it's AI. And of course, if you do use one of the free versions of that, it then tries to sell you something that will make it so it can't be spotted. But of course, it's a bit like an arms race of technology. So I think that my belief, perhaps I'm just too optimistic, is that it will be sorted out by human ingenuity, with the help of AI, of course.
Well, ironically, to your point, is that even though that imagery that we've talked about was actually posted millions of times and shared millions of times, you're right. It may be that that AI can vet AI, and that's going to be the battleground. So it's technology versus technology. But ultimately, it is a bit of a worrying sign that some people could be hoodwinked very easily.
Yes.
But interesting. I'd be curious as to whether any of our listeners have been hoodwinked by AI in some form.
Yes, let us know. All you have to do is go to markandpete.com. That's markandpete.com. Just check that you're subscribed, and then you can comment on this and every episode. We love it if you do. But that's it for this week. It's goodbye from Mark and myself. In a world of rising prices, fading heroes, and false images, remember these words that Jesus said: heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. That's Matthew 24:35. Because truth endures even when everything else flickers. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time.